Welcome back to This is Gravel, here on Gravel Guru. Neil, good to be back in the studio with you today.
It's good to be back. We said we would be back in the studio, keep recording these as we lead up towards Unbound, trying to at least get one out a week, and we're back here doing that today, Matt. It's good, especially after a nice ride that we had last night.
Correct. We did have a great ride last night, and this is like the second time in 10 days. I'll take that as weekly almost,
Weekly-ish.
So, we got out. We had a fantastic ride last night. We went out kind of expecting just to be roadies for a little bit and ride pavement out to the Coffee County line, which, what is that, 10 miles out there? So
yeah, we can't quite get to the Coffee County line right now because
there is, in fact, a bridge collapse on the road we usually ride out there.
And so we rode out to that bridge collapse, and then we turned around and rode back in. But we noticed as we were riding out, and definitely as we were riding back in, like the gravel looked good enough, which was crazy because we had about 3.5 inches of rain over the past 48 hours down those roads.
Yeah, if you followed our stories last night, we talked about that a little out there.
Yeah, and I mean, so, 3.5 inches of rain over a 48-hour period is a ton of rain, we would think, but we haven't had a whole lot of rain before that this season. And so we looked at those roads, and man, they were perfect. And I'll be honest, I kind of wish that we had spent the entire time on the gravel yesterday.
Yeah.
We got some good climbing riding on the pavement.
Yeah.
But at the same time, man, I wish we would have been on that gravel because it was beautiful. And I know I had a blast those miles that we rode on it last night.
Yeah, riding Old Highway 50 is never a bad thing. I mean, because it is climby. I mean, this is an old, narrow highway out there. What is it? It's probably only like 25 feet wide.
Yeah.
Like, super narrow road. It is the old highway because then they built a new one. And then they built Interstate 35 between them here in Lyon County. So there's 3 roads that run perpendicular to each other through the county, and that's why we get out on old. Really, it's about the only safe pavement to ride in the area.
I was going to say, anytime that we run into our rain and what we would think would be wet gravel roads that we don't want to, mess up our bikes on or cause any kind of issues, we usually take that. And I mean, last night as we were riding, we saw some riders out there as well. So it is a common kind of area for a lot of local cyclists to travel when we think that the gravel roads aren't going to be perfect. But I'll be honest, they were perfect last night. And I'm glad, like I said, we got just about almost 30 miles in. So
perfect as long as we follow kind of the rules of the road. The county does do a good job of putting signs out on what's closed and what's not. And usually they're closed for a good reason. And when you say we're riding gravel roads, we were riding gravel. We weren't riding dirt. We weren't riding MMRs out there. But got out to enjoy that. So anytime you get out right after a rain in April, and guess what? It's springtime. Storms can be coming anytime. You got to take advantage of these miles.
Absolutely. Got to take advantage of them. Had a blast, like I said, getting a ride. And I'm looking forward to maybe getting out to ride some more here over this week. I know we got some rain coming in, and we got a race that we'll be talking about here in a little bit. But definitely hoping to take advantage of as many May miles as I can. And I think probably you are doing the same thing as well, hoping to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. We're filming this on, Monday morning, April 29th.
Yeah.
I'm already in May. April 29th is going to come out on April 30th, the last day of the month. And then we're 1 month out from Unbound. And May is a beast of itself.
May is a busy month. It's going to be a busy month that we got a lot of things, I know, each of us going on. And you got, I would say, a lot going on, too, in a different scope because you got some life changes that you're going to, I think, talk about here for a minute.
Yeah, absolutely. So today, the day this show's coming out, April 30th, is actually my last day at Merchant Cycles. So it's been a little bit over 2 years there. Had a blast. Learned so much about the bike industry. Me and the owners have kind of decided to go different ways. The bike shops are bike shops right now, and I have the opportunity to come and do things like Gravel Guru full-time. I'm also running my freelance production business, Bluestem Productions. If anybody knows me here locally, that's a company I've had kind of on the back burner for, almost 10 to 15 years here in town. I have a full TV truck. There's a reason we have a studio full of cameras and equipment, and it's not Gravel Guru paying those bills. So anyways, today, Tuesday, the day this episode's coming out, it's my last day down there, and I wish them nothing but success. Tim, Isaac, Seth, and the crew down there at Merchant Cycles are going to knock it out of the park. So it's been a true blast being down there for 2 years and learned a lot.
I want to say, you said you've learned a lot. So stepping out of your 2 years there at Merchant Cycles, what do you think you're going to take away the most from your experience as a manager there in a bike shop?
Yeah, so that's a good question, Neil. What have I learned kind of the most after 2 years of managing a bike shop that I'm going to kind of take with me in the future? And one, I will say that was my first true retail experience. I've spent 5 or so years working in the news industry, 6 or 7 in the PR. So this was a big step in another direction for me during that time. So honestly, the big thing I'm going to take away is one, just the retail experience, learning how to merchandise and learning how a retail environment works. However hard that may be coming out of a pandemic. And like when I first started, there still weren't parts out there. Their bikes were still hard to find, hard to get. And now we're kind of on the opposite end of the spectrum where bikes are plentiful, parts are pretty plentiful, except for a few random things out there. But the retail experience, managing a staff day to day and just holding down that environment of, you're open 5 days a week and, there's not a lot of flexibility in that. And, that just comes with the nature of retail. And I know there's a lot of former bike shop people that watch and listen to this podcast. And I say former because there's been a lot of people that work a couple of years in a bike shop or any retail environment and move on. So yeah, those are kind of the things I'm really going to take from it. So
okay, awesome. So talk a little bit about your future plans. I mean, you talked about working with your production company.
Yeah.
I know a lot of our listeners probably know us from Gravel Guru, obviously, and folks that have watched this show for the past 8+ years know that. But you do so much more outside of just this show. So maybe just tell some of the folks some of the things that you've done in the past and maybe some of the ideas for what the future for Blue Stem Productions is going to look like.
Yeah, so like I said just a second ago, my experience really came from working in the newspaper industry, and that was at a time where I was actually hired to work in the newspaper to do video. So I came into the multimedia world there during high school, actually, and worked through that and worked on the live streaming. I've done live streaming for a lot of sports, high school type stuff, smaller leagues, and just grown with that. And now kind of working more on like the corporate organizational side of promotional videos and things like that for organizations, education, that type of thing. Photo, video, web assets, anything like that. And just growing with it, the landscape for that industry, not to bore people to death, has changed a lot, obviously, because we're all connected to our phones 24 hours a day. They're in our hands. So content is being consumed at such a rapid rate that versus when I took the job even at the bike shop or the school district before, I don't think people really understood the value of digital content yet. And I can tell that table has very much turned where digital content is what we consume all day. It's like this podcast. We're watching this on our devices or we're listening to it on our drive. We're constantly consuming content, where when I first started in this industry, you had to be linear, you had to be on a TV network, you had to have cable, to watch content.
Yeah, you talked about, first getting hired on with the newspaper, and I think some folks don't realize that was kind of the beginning, I want to say, because you did video of kind of your exposure with the race and covering it. I mean, you've been covering the race, and I don't think people maybe realize just how far back you covering the race goes before even Gravel Guru time of covering the old DK200s. In the early days?
This is
early
2024 we're in right now? Yeah, so just jogging my memory, I started when I worked for the Emporia Gazette and Chris Walker hired me. The first year I remember going out to take photos, and I had no clue what this race was. And understand it, this is the year 2010. And I'd done bike across Kansas in 2009, so I wasn't new to cycling, around it more, already. And I'd done gravel rides in 2008 OB Down home days and stuff like that. So again, not new to bikes or anything, but I knew nothing about the DK race back then.
And back then too, we're talking, and folks maybe don't realize, we're talking a couple hundred riders. We're not talking a couple thousand. Mm-hmm. We're talking a couple hundred people back in 2010 doing this event.
It was either 2009 or 2010, I think, when they moved it downtown for the first time. And I will say this much, as a photographer back then, it was still such a small thing. And, I'm on the hour. I was in high school at that point. I think I was a junior, senior in high school. And the thing with it was I will tell you, it's such a small blip in my story schedule for the week of what content to get that it got a couple hours of my day on a Saturday. It didn't even get a full day, which now it consumes almost a full week. But that's how I got started with it with the newspaper. And Chris Walker down there really believed in the digital side of the newspapers expanding. And I remember sending, and this ties all of these relationships together, Christy Moan an email right after we watched it and went, have you ever thought of streaming the finish line of it? So then in 2011, we did the first finish line stream for the event. We set up in the upstairs of the Granada. There's some old photos out there on Facebook. Leland hosting segments the day before with brand ambassadors. So nothing that we're doing now is new by any.
2011. Did you guys heard that date, by the way? This is not, again,
Yeah.
like I say, this isn't new.
Yeah, we went through a Ustream website, and yeah, we had cameras up on the loft. I think Zach Hacker was at the newspaper then, doing finish line interviews down there with just on a wireless mic down on the street. So yeah, none of this is new, and that's really how Gravel Guru began. Was we worked under the newspaper kind of. It wasn't branded Gravel Guru at that time. It was just a finish line live stream, and yeah, then kind of a few years of some dormancy there when I went to work for the school district, but really missed covering cycling. And boom, that's 9 years later, puts us here.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, just how much background is there. And so, I mean, I think, again, this is going to be a big transition for you, obviously, going from being a bike shop manager, having that to kind of doing some freelance work and some other things for yourself here over the next few months. But I can just tell that I think you're pretty excited also, just from the conversations we've had, whether it be last night on the bike or other ones, about kind of what the near future at least holds, and maybe the long-term future holds for you being able to do some of this work again.
Yeah, I mean, this transition might be coming publicly very big right now type deal, as I've made some announcements and stuff, but it's been a month plus in the works type deal and working with the store owners and leadership there. But I'm excited, 100%. I mean, there's a scary facet of it, of you're stepping away from known income, that type of thing. But the timing is perfect. I have a month right here to focus on leading up to Unbound Gravel. Like, Unbound is not the only gravel event out there by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, there's one that's going to be 500 feet that way later this week. I mean, out the door.
Yes, there is.
And we'll talk about that later with you when we wrap up the show about what's coming up. But there's a lot of gravel events, but it's the Super Bowl, and it's here. It's the one we've always been connected to.
And it's why we're going to spend some time here today even talking about it, answering some questions that folks have for us, because one of the things that we said we wanted to do leading up to the event was answer any questions that folks have. And so each week we're kind of I think, put out there, hey, do you have questions for us? We do have a lot of experience. Again, you've been covering this event, as you just mentioned, all the way back to 2010. You've got a lot of experience covering it.
Yeah.
I've ridden it a lot. You and I have put... combined, I would say close to 100,000 miles combined, almost maybe, out here on these roads over our lifetime. I mean, we have put a ton of time out here, ridden a lot of it, ridden in a lot of different conditions at a lot of different times. And so, we're going to put some of that experience that we have as locals living here kind of out there for folks to be able to consume, because
we're going to get here to the Q&A in a second on this, and I know where you're going with this. And I think this is one thing I've learned being in a bike shop answering questions every day for the last 2 years is we have a lot of knowledge, but I think at times we might be we're humble individuals about the knowledge we know.
Yeah.
And I think maybe we're going to be a little bit more vocal about that, or try to express it a little bit different over the next month or so.
Well, I look back to maybe 4 or 5 years ago, pre-pandemic times, and the amount of, different emails or messages or DMs or anything that people were giving us. And it was coming from just a lot of average Joes, folks like you and me that were out there riding. And I'm not going to name drop any names, but over the past 4 years, I've had the professionals dropping into my DMs.
Yes.
I've had the folks that are going out there and racing for the top spots and asking questions because they see us on social media, they see the riding we're doing, they see the roads that we're experiencing, and they're like, what information can you share?
Yeah.
Well, not necessarily pre-route, because we don't usually get a glance at the route earlier than a lot of folks do. But as far as conditions, as far as what to expect out there, because like last year, again, we talked about it when I was training for the XL, I had ridden all of the 200 course. I knew what was out there.
Well,
and I didn't do that because I knew that the route was going to be. It was just part of my training. And so
I think it comes back to, like, we talked about this on the ride last night. We were talking about, when do you think the first Grand Prix riders are going to start showing up to town? Oh. I think we'll see them this week. 100%. I think we'll see a rider or two show up. I don't know if they'll stay through for the full month, but Unbound is the next event on their schedule. And the Grand Prix, love it, hate it, is definitely shaping the front end of these races.
Yeah, and they'll be here, and they might leave if they go do Locos or if they go do Rule 3
absolutely.
Or something else for a weekend and head to those places. But I really think that just based upon what we've seen over the last few years, that riders will start showing up in town, the professional side of riders, over the next week or so, and probably spend a lot of time out here scouting and experiencing the roads. And
I think it's also worth noting at this point, because we're closing in on getting started on Q&A.
Yeah.
We have basically Gravel Guru as an entity has zero sponsorships. We're taking $0 from any brands. There's brands we like. There's brands that have given us some product to test before, and we're always open to that. And I will say, as the future changes with me here on Gravel Guru, there'll probably be some sponsors involved in some things, but that will not change our perspective of view. If it doesn't get us down the gravel down here in Kansas, we're not going to run it and we're not going to endorse it.
No, you're not going to hear me talk, especially when it comes to like tires. I'm not going to endorse a tire that I don't think is a good thing. Like, that's just me.
Anyways, I just wanted that disclaimer out there. Like,
100%.
we haven't taken money since pre-pandemic, but
So
yeah.
if you want to send us money,
Not worried about that. We're going to have a lot of fun leading up to Unbound. Let's get into Q&A here.
Q&A, let's go.
So it's been a long time since we've had real Q&A questions.
Yeah.
This was a staple of the show there for a long time. I guess I'm just going to read you the first one. I got the questions here.
Okay.
Let you take a first shot at it, then I'll banter back on it. And this is a question I'm very passionate about. But what can we do when coming to the Emporia area to train that would reduce the stress of the local rural residents, i.e. the farmers, the ranchers, the people that live out there on the land? We can talk about the local inside Emporia a little bit, but that's your normal be courteous stuff. But reducing the stress or maybe the anxiousness of the landowners out there.
Yeah, when we're out there, obviously you're riding on these roads that these landowners are on daily. They are farming. They are out there working these fields. They are out there moving cattle around. My biggest thing to them, if you run into anybody out there, is just be courteous. Like, one of the things you and I do in a lot of rides that I think is so important that I don't see a lot of people doing, especially when a big tractor or somebody is hauling a big load behind them, we just stop.
Pull over to the shoulder.
We're on a training ride. We're out there just having fun. We're not on race day. We're not out there competing for any spot. It's you and I and maybe sometimes a group, but just get out of the way. Stop. Take a drink. Use the restroom. Whatever you got to do. But just stop for a moment and let that big combine, that big tractor, that big load that somebody is hauling through. One, they appreciate it because they don't also want to hit you. I mean, they don't. But those things are huge.
Yeah.
You don't realize just how big some of that machinery is that is coming down the road. And so, to me, anytime I see somebody that I can tell is a rural resident that is riding on those roads for their work, for their livelihood, I get out of the way. I make as much space as I can. I don't need to hold my line. We are riding gravel roads. And the reality is, if you can't get out of the nice line for a moment and ride off on the edge, you maybe shouldn't even be riding the gravel anyways, because what you're going to experience on a 200-mile or a 100-mile or even a 50-mile course is probably going to be a whole lot worse than what you might experience just on the edge of a gravel road that somebody's trying to come through with machinery. So that's, to me, a big, big thing.
I think with me on this, I'll address this one. 100% be courteous. My number one rule with riding, and this sounds stupid, it's very, very simple. And I've said this 1,000 times in the bike shop. I've said it here on the show. But when you see someone coming, if they're just in a truck or something, one, give them some room. But look up and wave. Give them the wave. Let them know you're human. So many times people are down in the bars. We're TTing out there for a training ride, trying to do it. Just be human with them, because they want to know that you saw each other out there. And being courteous goes a long ways. It's like you said, pull over. I come from a farming family. I have a lot of family, extended family that still farms. A lot of the roads we ride every week.
Yeah.
I'm spouting off who owns this or who farms that or what. Neil's learned more about farming in the time riding with me than in his entire life.
Yeah.
But, be courteous on it, reducing the stress. Understand that when you see them out there with their machinery or you get out in the hills with cattle, that is their job. That would be no different than someone coming in here and trying to have a conversation with us while we're filming. They're trying to do their job. And the good weather days for us on the bike are also good weather days for them to do their job.
Yeah.
And we have to respect and know that just give them some room. The roads are public. Absolutely, we're all welcome on them. But give them some room. Don't pressure them. You talked about stopping and waiting for them. One thing that's becoming more and more of an issue, because there's so much more of us out there, is if you do have to stop and use the bathroom, let the car pass, before you do it on a training ride, anything like that. Make sure you're keeping yourself covered. Those type of things, just to be respectful for it. You don't know if it's the whole family in the car type deal. Well, those type of things out there.
And the thing is I know that a lot of times, oh man, I got to go. Like, you can either roll up the road a little bit further away from somebody's house, away from the view of the front,
There's-
porch. There's a lot of places.
There's a lot of tree rows out here and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, as much as we talk about how we don't have trees, there are plenty of places to go to get away. Be courteous with that kind of stuff too, 100%. I love what you say about just waving. I mean, I try to do that.
look up and
Whether
wave.
the car is behind me and passing me on the side, I just give them a nice little wave, or coming towards me, just a nice little wave. And 9 times out of 10, I'd say I get the wave back. And it's just a good thing to keep a relationship. Sometimes if there's somebody out on the road, I actually experienced this on a ride I went on here probably about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and he was out there with some of his animals and just stopped and had a chat, as opposed to having it's supposed to coming through with my bicycle and scaring or scattering or causing a problem with the animals that he had. I just stopped and ended up having about a 5-10 minute chat, which was a great chat, not only with this individual, but I think it was a great chat too for us as a cycling community to have that, to again, show them we're real people, one, and two, that we're not out there trying to do anything malicious to their land or to their animals. Whereas if I would have just plowed through on my ride, could have been a headache for all of us.
I don't think there's any ever malicious thoughts through the minds of cyclists or the ranchers, farmers out there. But stop and talk to them.
Yeah.
A lot of times, especially for those of you coming to town that aren't local, the farmers, the ranchers want to hear those stories. They want to hear about where you're going to end up answering as many questions for them as they are you. And that's the thing, is you see something you're curious about, don't be afraid to ask them. If you see them sitting there, in an equipment waiting for someone to come help them or whatnot, have a conversation. So, just be courteous, be respectful of it. It's easy to put headphones in or earbuds in and not pay attention, but you really got to be paying attention to your surroundings.
I would say if you're doing that, always at least leave one out so that you can hear, especially the vehicle coming up behind you. I know that we have technology now that can help with that and alert you that a vehicle is coming, but I leave one out so you can just hear the things that maybe you wouldn't hear if you just put them both in and are blasting some music and not paying attention, and all of a sudden don't realize that a huge truck carrying a massive load is right behind you and trying to pass you. If you're alerted to that, it's definitely safer for all involved.
We good with that question?
Yeah.
Be courteous.
Yeah.
That's what it comes down
100%.
to. Number 2, how much rowdier is the north course versus the south course? Is it just a few sections, or is it significantly different?
Go ahead. Yeah.
My caveat with this is year to year, there is no established north route and south route. These are routes that maybe borrow a lot of the sections. And obviously, like sometimes, like the last 2 years, they try to recycle routes for 2 years.
Yeah. Similar roads.
But that doesn't mean that there is no established south course that we say this is south and this is north. I think at some point maybe it'll get to that place in gravel or with Unbound here. But roads are always changing and evolving out there. That's just the nature of the gravel and how it moves with the weather and industry out there, whether it's the oil field or wind farms or ranching and farming. Road conditions change throughout the year and years over time. So we cannot, this is not a cookie cutter question.
It's not. And the thing about north, for instance, going up into Wabunsee County this year, Wabunsee County is changing week to week a lot of times because these roads up there, for the most part, now there are some roads absolutely 100% that are maintained, but a lot of those roads aren't maintained. You don't get any sort of new gravel or maintenance gravel coming through, or anybody out there grading them. They're just left to kind of go with whatever happens. And so, there have been roads up there in Wabunsee County that I've ridden before that the washout comes because we had a big rain, and that big rain comes through and it just absolutely plows away a foot or two of gravel. And all of a sudden, either there's just this big kind of ditch that has been made through the middle of a road because of the washout that's taken place, or a big drop off. And so you never know what's going to happen up there. The same thing, though, I would say is a lot of the times the conditions on the south. You don't know what you're going to experience sometimes ride to ride. Now, I do believe personally that Greenwood County does get maintained a lot better than Wabunsee County does for the most part.
Oil fields.
Correct. But there is, I would say, still a lot of chunky craziness on the south side, too.
And what you have to remember about these roads is, like I said with the oil fields comment, on the oil fields, those wells are being checked every single day. Mm-hmm. I mean, rain, snow, mud, They're being checked every single day. So that's when you get into like the fist-sized gravel out there just to support that type of maintenance. But when you're on roads, I don't care what county you're in and what part of the state that are traveled heavily, obviously they're maintained. There's a lot of places in Wabunsee County, Morris County, where there's not many cars a week. There might be some sections there where there's not a single car in a week down some of these roads. So they are maintained as an as-needed basis. So going back to the question, is it rowdier?
It can be in spots, sure.
Yes.
But and this is just me, I think both North and South have their difficulties and their easiness is maybe the word I'm looking for. For instance, and they could obviously throw some massive curveballs this year. I don't know what exactly the route is going to be like going north right now. But if it stays similar to what it was, say, in 2019 or in 2021 when they went north, you're not going to have to worry about getting off your bike, even if we had a ton of rain in the first 10, 11 miles like you had to do last year. Those roads are solid gravel roads. They are usually going to be able to hold all the moisture that we get and then some. They would be rideable in the conditions that we had last year for those first, again, honestly, for about the first almost 30 miles until you get up into Wabunsee County. When you get on Carl Reserve Road, that's when you hit the first little bit. I know that they go off. Again, this is looking at 2019 and 2021.
To be clear, we do not have the routes.
I don't have the route, yeah. And so they went on, from there they went to K4. They went from K4 to Headwaters. Headwaters was the first, also like straight, just dirt road. Call Reserve is kind of a mix of some big chunky rock and some dirt here and there. But Headwaters was all, that would have been a hike-a-bike section if it had gone through there last year. But you're talking about being able to get 30-plus miles into the ride before really having to worry about anything. Whereas last year, folks were dealing with that 11 miles in, not even an hour.
And the nice thing, and so you're going to thin out by the time you get there. So it's not shoulder-to-shoulder people when if you were to hit mud or something like that in a hard spot. The thing we do know about routes, and we do know about our geography here, is there's some key locations, hills that we're pretty sure. I'm pretty sure you'll probably see Little Egypt on this route. Like,
maybe.
I don't know anything about it. There's only so many towns north, and there's only so many towns south.
And the thing about north, too, and this is, I guess, one of the things that maybe folks don't realize, too, is there's also so many roads north. Whereas south, you do have a pretty steady grid pattern that really runs both through Lyon and Wabunsee, or not Greenwood County.
And Butler.
Whereas when you get up into Wabunsee County, you don't have that grid pattern. You have roads, and you have to take the roads that are there, and there are not as many of them by any means as there are going to the southern route. And so I would say probably a lot of what you saw in 2019 and 2021 will probably make an appearance. Absolutely. Little Egypt will be there. Little Egypt, to me.
And going north has those landmarks. It has those roads because, like you said, there aren't many other.
Yeah, and Little Egypt, to me, is one, pick your line and be smart about it.
I've heard Little Egypt is in great shape right now, actually.
Well, everybody always talks about how rough and bad it is, and it is if you just don't pick your line well. I've rode Little Egypt a ton of times. You know how many flats I've had? 0. How many punctures I've had? 0. Yeah, I'm not worried about it because
pick your line.
Pick my line.
But I will also say, and the thing is, this comes in a different part of the day. We go south. We go over Texaco. Texaco's just a hill. I mean, it's usually fairly rideable, except last year when it was new oil field gravel.
Big chunks.
But then you go over
Teeter,
thank you. And then a couple miles on that. Teeter's a long climb, for us Kansans at least.
Yeah.
DD,
yeah.
is real. Like, I don't care. You can say what you want about Little Egypt, but it compares.
And the thing about DD that's different that I've seen cause people a lot is there's a lot of descending through that. And so you're going at a kind of a higher rate of speed, at least at times, and you've got to be
the way the route's taking them through there, at least every time I know, you're typically descending at a faster rate of speed. And the crazy thing about the South roads are, when you get up north, typically you're on a pretty average road. And I say average as in it maintains those conditions most of the day.
Yeah.
Of mediocre, roads. Out south, like I said, there's a lot of passageways and what I would call almost gravel highways in some spots where, like, you turn off Teeter, and Teeter is a wide, fast, usually pretty groomed, manicured road, and then you're out in a pasture for all intensive purposes on it. So is one route rowdier than the other? No.
No, I think they both have it. I think what people will notice most, and this is just me looking at the North Course, is that majority of your climbing gets jammed into that middle 140 miles. So your elevation is really going to come packed in those middle 100 in 40 or so miles of the 200 course, because that North Lyon County, when you see the elevation profile, it will look like it kind of is going up the whole way. It's never anything very steep. It's never anything very crazy over that first 30 miles until you get out of Lyon County and into Wabaunsee County. But you come back in, as again, assuming, and again, I don't know the route. I'm just looking back to 2019 and 2021. You come back in, you climb Cahola, and for that last 25 miles in from Cahola, everything is downhill or flat. And so, you've got a pretty chill section at the beginning, a pretty chill section at the end, whereas last year, you got D, and then while most folks didn't get to experience it, but you would have a lot of stair-stepping climbing coming through that mud section last year, and then you climb out to the towers, and you get a lot more climbing in the first 30 miles of the south route than you get in that first 30 miles of the north route. However, that north route, it is climb, 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 climb when you're in Wabaunsee County. Now, granted, you get the descents as well, but it's those descents in Wabaunsee County that cause the people the problems, because they take those descents because they want to make up that time from that long climb, and that's when you see folks with the flats and all the other issues on the sides of the road.
But let's remember, the year's 2019. The record is broken for the first under 10-hour 200-mile finish on a north route. Anyways, it can be done. I don't think you can quantify results just like I did, one way or the other, based on the route. Weather plays such a big influence into what the day's going to be. And so, routes are routes. It can all be hard, and there can be better days than others.
The only thing I would say about the north route to hope for is hope it's not hot. But we'll talk about that, I'm sure, probably in the coming weeks at times. But to me, a hot north route, if you're out there in full sun and you're out there with that sun hitting that white gravel that is up there for the most part in a lot of places, I will tell you I've had some miserable days on hot days up there in Wabaunsee County, whereas they aren't as bad in Lyon or Greenwood. That's just me.
Moving on to the next question.
Next question.
Do you remember how long our shows used to be doing Q&A? Maybe this is why we quit doing, because we're on 2 of 4 right now.
Ooh. So,
as an OG of gravel, and these questions are submitted. I'm not going to say we're OGs of gravel. We like we said, we've been covering it since the mid 2000s.
I've been riding since 2013, y'all. So I've had 11 years.
Okay, but a longtime gravel rider in Emporia. Let's rephrase it that way. As a longtime gravel rider in Emporia, do you think Lifetime has been of benefit, or does it contribute to the negative hype? You want to take this one?
Yeah, I'll start. I'm going to take you all back to 2018, when I was sitting in what at the time was Gravel City Adventure and Supply Company, being told by the former ownership of the DK200 at that time that it was being sold to Lifetime. Now, I got this information long before you even had it. I think
I didn't find out till it went public.
I'm going to say, I don't think I told you. I think I kept that one even secret from you.
I found out on Facebook.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm pretty sure I kept that one even secret from you, because it was something they didn't want folks to talk about. Now, it did get out there because people do talk, but I had kept it secret. But I remember first hearing about it and being like, why? I love the local aspect, and I loved everything about it. But this comment that was said at that meeting was that this was to keep this event going for the next 20 years. That this was a move that was made to make sure that this event wouldn't fade and disappear like some events either were doing or had done, because events were starting to fade away. It was tough to keep things going because financially it's tough. It's tough to keep the manpower. It's tough to keep people energized and excited about it. And here is a company that this is at least part of Lifetime's focus. Obviously, they have their gyms, they have a lot of other things, but they have a lot of events at that time. A lot of theirs at that point were either in mountain biking or also in kind of the running sphere of things. They really didn't have a huge gravel presence at that point. But we were reassured that this was going to be something that was going to keep the event moving going forward. Now, again, my first responses were very down. I was not very excited about it. It wasn't something that I was kind of like, this is ruining, and I changed my viewpoint on all of it. I don't think it ruined gravel at all. In fact, as I look at what the event has done since then, I think it's only gotten better. The atmosphere, the party around it, the celebration, like, I like it. I love what I'm seeing. Going down like you and I did to Bentonville last year for the Backyard Bash, like, that was cool. And that does not happen without a big company that can throw something like that. And ultimately, I know it might sound terrible, but put it probably as a tax write-off so that they can write that off as an expense for promotion, for advertising. And yet they are able to throw this big Backyard Bash where, 500-600 people came down to Bentonville, rode bikes, hung out, had a good time, got to experience a place that maybe was new for some of them, and all put on by this company. Now, there's a lot that I think Lifetime is doing within gravel that I can understand why some people don't like. I think that we forget that the world runs on money a lot of times and forget that, you know what, all the money that comes into this, whether it be through Lifetime or through other things, are also what benefit you and I. I mean, do you remember back in 2012, 2013, the tires that we were riding on for gravel?
I do.
Yeah. Do you remember
Do you remember the tubes we had to change back in
tubes that we
2013?
All the different things that we were doing. The rigidness of some of the bikes, and now we've got some nice suspension built into our frames. A lot of things have become a lot more accessible. There are gravel-specific bikes. Now, I understand you can ride any bike. My first 100, I rode on a mountain bike. We can ride anything out there. That's not a problem, but the influx of money, the influx of professionals, the influx of companies like Lifetime have made it so that there's more money that is being spent, more money that is being brought in, more things that are being developed that are making my life, as I start to age, a whole lot more comfortable on the bike. And so I'm okay with it. I'm definitely a whole lot more okay with it than I was back in 2018 when I first heard that news.
I think I would say ditto to most of it.
Okay.
I like you as what's going on? Where is this coming from? Because like I said at the beginning of the show, like I started being involved in 2010 to 2011 is really when I was involved in a media aspect. Like literally, I've never ridden this event. I've never ridden a single mile of any of the Unbound DK events because I've always been working it in some capacity.
Yep.
Like whether it was Gravel Guru or the TV stuff or the video stuff, like it's a busy day.
Or the bike shop.
Yeah.
The last few years.
Yeah, the bike shop too. Anyways, there was a lot of uncertainty back then. Mm-hmm. And I will say the team in that organization deserves a ton of respect because they didn't come in trying to change things. Honestly, I feel like they've been a stabilizing force in the gravel scene because let's not forget about how many events got canceled there in 2020, 2019, the onset of the pandemic and this stuff. And they were able to absorb some problems that I don't know if small ownership or small events were able to do at that level and keep it there. The other side is, and maybe we look at this different than some of the other towns that have some smaller races from them or other events on the gravel scene. They built an office here in Emporia. Lifetime has an office. It's right next door to the bike shop. Like, so these people are still figures in our community type deal. We can ask them questions, and they want to come and learn our gravel, and that's how they open their mind to it. And I mean, it's not so much the coming to it now because most of them have lived here or been here enough to know without naming the names of them, but they've become parts of the local community and friends and family. Yeah, I mean, at first it was shocking. I guess my bigger thing on this, or does it contribute to the negative hype? Social media is a tough place to balance things. I think the algorithms are going to feed you whatever you want to consume. There is negative hype. There's negative hype in every sport. Like, have we seen the NFL draft?
Yeah.
Like, there's negative hype everywhere right now.
There's a lot of money there.
And there's a ton of money there. So, I don't know. I don't really know where to go with the negative hype comment. I think as individuals and smaller media producers like us, Lifetime knows where the money is, where the sponsorships is, and they have to go chase that to put on great events. But with that, I can see, I'm going to guess some of the negative hype is the celebration of everyday riders is where this comment would come from. It's still there. I was at the finish line until 2 or 3 a.m. this last year, cheering people in, finishing the XL with minutes to spare. I think we as cyclists and the people that come to these events have changed so much that that's not Lifetime's fault. These events have grown so much that when it was 600 people finishing, you knew a lot of the people because you saw them at Maisie's.
Yeah.
You saw them at Gravel World. You saw them at Mid-South. You saw them at the Epic over in Missouri. Like, they were family reunions, and we talked about this. Go back to the early shows that every weekend we went to an event, we saw our friends again from all over the place. It's a big event. It's not the same anymore.
No, it's not. I mean, there's over 4,000 riders coming, and it makes sense that you have so much that you can cover and so much that can be, viewed. And obviously, these individuals that are racing it professionally are going to get a certain amount of that coverage because they are winning, they are competing, they are getting sponsored. So there are sponsor dollars, and some of the coverage that you do consume, especially on social media, is coming from those sponsors, coming from those people that are trying to make sure that their individuals are getting viewed more and more. But I think the story and the celebration for the little guy is still there too, because you still watch the folks come in that finish 200 miles and they are still celebrated, and there are people out there high-fiving as you're riding in, still celebrating the person that went out there and rode.
Absolutely. The one thing that has to happen, though, is you've cleared your last checkpoint, you're 50 miles out, 75 miles, who knows what it looks like this year. Encourage your support crews to come to the finish line. It might be, 50 miles out? That could be 5 hours late in the day for you.
Yeah.
I mean,
don't know what pace you're going at.
Send them to the finish line to cheer people on. That's what makes it celebratory for every rider out there. After you're done, it's going to be a long day. Stand down there, have a beverage, have a cold water, whatever it be, and cheer other people in. Congratulate everybody, because that is the spirit of gravel.
Yeah, and that's what I think back a lot of times to 2014. 2014 was my only 100-mile event that I've done so far. And, coming into that one early afternoon, I can't remember exactly what time I finished at, but having the road lined with people and just, cheering me back in after I had just gone through what was 111 miles, by the way, and got myself to the finish line, and, reaching out the hand. We always talk about high-fiving those kids that are there on the edge, and, I mean, it made my day, and I felt celebrated then, but I will say I felt celebrated. I look back to last year for just a second. I didn't finish the XL. We all know what happened there. But let me tell you, the coolest moment I have had on a bike ever was the start of the XL.
Oh, yeah.
To have those streets lined
on
by
Friday afternoon.
On a Friday afternoon where storms are about to come in, by the way, and they're not just lined by the everyday average citizen or average rider. They're lined by the professionals. And these guys are out there cheering us. These ladies are out there cheering us as we're getting ready to go and as we're taking off. And, that to me was worth all the training, all the lining up. Even if it only lasted for 25 miles, it was such a cool experience because here I am, just an everyman, going out there riding my bike. And I felt celebrated. And so I think that it's still there. But we do get fed by social media, especially a lot of that stuff that seems to highlight only certain people, certain things. But I feel like the celebration's still there.
And with gravel, as we wrap this question up, it is what you make of it. If you're having a bad day, make sure it only becomes your bad day. Don't take it out on everybody around you. That's something you, as doing media and stuff, standing around at enough checkpoints and stuff, it's no one else's fault you got a flat, or it's no one else's fault that you broke a chain or a derailleur. It's you're having a bad day. Don't take it out on anybody else around you, your support crews. Final question. This is a quick one. Let's not milk this one, Neil. The final question. Will you be doing Unbound route recons like we've done in the past?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
100%. Why not?
I expect that when the route is released, I haven't told this to you, by the way, that when the route is released, and today, the day this is coming out is the 30th of April, I'm assuming we'll see routes in the next 10 days. We do not know when. We don't know. Hopefully it goes public because I'm not registered. So hopefully someone tells me when they come out quickly. But I expect we'll probably be here in the studio very quickly. And it might be a live Q&A on Facebook Live or Instagram Live where we're just peering over the maps, giving general thoughts. I expect we'll probably make some trips to see some spots on the route in the month, but you can pretty well bet our month of May is going to be talking about routes.
Yeah, as soon as those routes come out, I think no doubt that we'll address them, and we might address them in a wide variety of shows, whether we address all 5 routes in one show or whether we address a handful here, a handful there. And obviously, once they come out too, same thing with what we did today, like throw your questions at us. If you got questions about the routes, again, maybe we have ridden those roads recently, or maybe we get up and we ride them as we prepare for that next show and answer those questions because, again, these roads are pretty close to us. And say we want to go and experience some of them, it is about an hour drive up to Alma, and we could jump in Alma, and we could probably jump on a large portion of the course and experience what's out there and be able to share that with you all.
So yes, there will be lots of route recon, route information. Also understand, roads can change very, very quickly too. Like the weekend we had with 3.5, 4 inches of rain in spots, like that much water moving down will change things. So nothing is set and certain. I've got some cool content ideas. Maybe we work with some of the people that help create the routes to bring them into the studio to talk about them. Maybe we find some other past riders, maybe some past champions or things like that to bring in, whether it's in studio or remote, and work with that. As we've wrapped up Q&A, one thing I want to say, there's a lot of forums out there. There's a lot of information. Don't psych yourself out. Like, people have been riding this event. I think this is the 18th or 19th year of it. The Death Ride came before that here in the Flint Hills of Kansas. Like, your chainring doesn't matter at the end of the day. Like, what's going on in your mind? Tire inserts were never a thing. Tubeless is new in the history of riding gravel. Like,
I completed 2 200s with tubes, and I never had a flat with tubes.
Yeah, you got lucky.
I got lucky, sure, but I also did it 2 years, no flats.
So, because you ride here, you know how to pick lines, but don't psych yourself out. Make sure you're comfortable with the gear you're on. Like, I look at that we're 30-ish days away from this event.
You don't need to change your setup 30 days out.
Like, this
don't do it.
If you need to get on it and just be comfortable on it, and that's what I said to someone in a group this morning before filming is just put whatever tires on and get used to them.
Here's the thing about tires, and people like to have a tire conversation, and I don't want to spend much time here. But every tire that you've put on your bike or will put on your bike has failed somebody. Failed somebody. Now, I do believe there are better tires out here than other ones, 100%. But even those ones that I believe are better have failed somebody out here over 100 or 200 miles.
Yeah.
And so
modern gravel tires are just that. They're modern gravel tires. We've come a long ways. Things are tested, and I can tell you if it's promoted for this event that company spent time doing research and development to make sure they last. But anyways, we're transitioning on.
Yes.
Neil, it is the 30th.
It's 30th.
You have a race this weekend.
You have a race this weekend.
Are you fully prepared for this race this weekend?
Yeah, sure, Matt. I'm totally ready to go ride my bike 100 miles. I think I'll be fine. I mean, 100 miles is something I did a lot of last year. It is something I've not done since December 30th when I met up with you and we went and rode 120. Well, you rode some
like
with me
30,
at the end, yes.
Like maybe not even that much.
Not even. I think you rode like the last 20 with me. And so, am I ready for it? Sure, I guess. This is more or less meant to get me ready, if anything, for Coast to Coast. That's coming up at the end of June. I was not signed up for Le Grind until about 2 weeks ago, give or take. I saw a friend who had posted it on her story that, hey, this is the last day to sign up to get a T-shirt. Well, that motivated me to sign up and wanted to get my T-shirt. And I also thought, I need to do something like this. I need to put some events on the calendar before Coast to Coast because I had nothing. And here's one that's in my backyard. I've never ridden Le Grind. I think this is probably at least their 5th or 6th year, if not more, to be honest with you. And I've never had the opportunity to get out there and do it. It's always come on a bad weekend. And finally, I just said, you know what? I'm going for it. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't a little bit concerned, at least, about the weather conditions, especially as I'm looking at what we have kind of in store, because it looks like it's going to rain some more this week. And so you already know I've set up the single speed bike, got that ready to go. And
Are you committed to the single speed for the
No.
event? Okay.
No, not at all. No, if I can ride gears,
Okay.
I'm riding gears, 100%. But if it looks like it's going to be a muddy mess,
Okay.
or a chance at least of a muddy mess, I mean, they do ride on some pretty hard packed roads. We do get down there into Greenwood County, into that Texaco area. But most of those roads are pretty solid.
Yeah, but there's only so much you can do in and out of Emporia on 100 miles, on a 50 mile. Like, keep that in mind too.
Yes, and so I'm not wanting to ride the single speed. If I can avoid the single speed, I'm going to avoid riding the single speed. I will be riding with gears, 100%, but that'll be kind of a game time decision, if you will.
Meanwhile, you and I had our first geared ride together in like 6 months yesterday.
Yeah, first one since Bentonville.
So
I was proud of you getting out there with some gears on your
Yeah.
bike.
But anyways, I think it'll be a great weekend for you out there. The weather over the weekend at least looks good.
Yeah, no, Saturday looks like it's supposed to be good. There's a chance maybe a little bit of rain in the morning, but
Keep you cool.
yeah, it's going to be nice temperatures. I think the high is supposed to be like mid 70s, which is so much nicer than what they had last year,
Yeah.
which last year was super windy and like 95. So
Yeah. Yeah,
I'll take
that
this.
one took everybody by storm last year. I remember being in the bike shop on that one and just hearing about the heat and everything
so
out there.
bad.
And so, with that in mind, shout out to High Gear, Ty, and Lacey, and all of them over there this weekend. Good luck on that event. I think there's still time maybe to get registered.
Yeah, I think folks can still get registered if I'm not mistaken, and it's a good fundraiser too for Handlebars for Hope.
Yeah, with Matt Brown down there doing mission work,
Yeah.
delivering bikes. So
cool thing. And like I say, I've wanted to do it. It's not as if I've avoided it for any specific reason. It is always early May, and this is a busy time of the year. It's the end of the school year. My son plays soccer. This is the first.
both of our
soccer-
spouses are teachers.
Yes.
Like this all.
This is the first soccer game of my son's that I'll miss, which kills me because I love watching the kid play. But I told him, hey, this is one game I'm gonna miss. Not gonna miss anymore, and he's all right with it. He'll probably go out and score like 4 goals, and I'll miss
Probably.
all of that, and be like, okay, thanks a lot, and I'll never miss another one because of that.
Yeah.
But I am looking forward to getting to race because, like I say,
been a while.
I need these kind of miles.
Yeah.
I need these kind of actual race miles before heading out to Michigan in late June.
So, anyways, this has been a long episode. I think we're over an hour on it, but there's been a lot of news. Thank you, everybody that supported me through the bike shop, and keep supporting them. Keep supporting your local bike shops. That's amazingly important to do right now. Every transaction matters, whether it's just going in to buy a CO2 cartridge or a tube. Anything you can do to keep your money at the local bike shops on Main Street is going to help out with the long run there. But excited to do this full time here, do media work. You're going to be seeing more of us. Make sure you follow the Minister of Gravel on social media, Gravel Guru. Send us questions. If you've got questions about anything, drop us a private message. We didn't give names out for any of this, so don't feel bad about asking questions in any way you can. But make sure you follow us. Shoot me an email, matt@gravelguru.com, and stay tuned for our next episode.